I stood alone behind the hearse, under a sky that was overcast but held no rain. I was waiting for my daughter to see her father one last time, but all I received was a phone call. "Mum, I'm not going to be able to make it to Dad's wake. I've had Robert's birthday party scheduled for months, and all the important people are going to be there." What hurt the most weren't the words themselves, but the casual tone, as if she were just cancelling a coffee date. I had just lost my partner of 45 years, and my only daughter was worried about a party. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love to know how far our stories are reaching. My name is Claire, I'm 68 years old, and I live in Austin, Texas. I lost my husband, Anthony, 3 days ago, after a 2-year battle with pancreatic cancer. We met when I was 22 years old and built everything together from that day forward: a life, a house, a family, and the building supplies company that supported our dreams. Our daughter, Julie, is 42 and lives in New York City with her husband, Robert, a man who never bothered to hide his lack of interest in our simple family. They met when she went to the city to study marketing, something we paid for with great sacrifice. From then on, she began to drift away. Visits became rare, and the phone calls grew shorter and shorter. When Anthony got sick, I thought she would come back, that the illness would bring her back to us, even if only out of a sense of guilt. How wrong I was. Her visits were limited to 2 in 2 years, each one lasting no more than a weekend. "Mum, you know how hard it is to get out of New York City," she'd say. "The traffic, work, my commitments." It was always the same excuses. Meanwhile, on social media, I saw her at parties, expensive restaurants, and on international trips, always with Robert by her side, always smiling for a camera, but never for us. Anthony died on a Tuesday at 3:42 in the morning. I held his hand until the very end, feeling his fingers grow cold in mine. I called Julie immediately. No one answered. I sent her a text message. "Julie, your father is gone. Please, come home." The reply didn't arrive until the next morning. "I'm so sorry, Mum. We're thinking of you. Thinking. Not coming. Not helping. Just thinking. As if thoughts could carry a casket." When I called again on Wednesday, she finally picked up. That's when she told me about Robert's birthday party, scheduled for Thursday, the same day as her father's wake. "It's a very important party, Mum. All of his contacts are going to be there. We've already paid for everything. There's no way to cancel now." Anthony's wake was simple, just as he always wanted. A few neighbors, friends from the company, 2 distant cousins, and the empty space where our daughter should have been. I had to lie, telling everyone she couldn't make it because she was sick. The shame of admitting the truth was too much to bear. I went back to an empty house. It was exactly as we had left it. Anthony's newspaper was still open on the armchair, his slippers beside the bed, his glass of water on the nightstand. For 45 years, I had woken up with him beside me. That night, the silence was deafening. Then my cell phone rang. It was Julie. I thought that remorse had finally knocked on her door, that she was calling to apologize, to say she would be there the next day. But no. "Mum, I have a problem. The caterer for today's party charged more than we agreed on, and we're a little tight on cash. Could you transfer me about $5,000? I promise I'll pay you back next month." My hand trembled as I held the phone. My husband, her father, had just been buried, and she was asking me for money for the party that was more important than saying a final goodbye to her own father. "Julie," I replied, with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. "Your father died yesterday." There was a brief silence. "I know, Mum. It's sad. But life goes on, right? And this party is very important for Robert's career." It was in that moment that something inside of me broke, something that could never be repaired. I hung up the phone without another word. I sat down in Anthony's armchair and cried until I had no tears left. The next morning, as the sun peeked timidly through the blinds, I made a decision. I opened the small home office where Anthony kept all the important documents. I started to go through everything: deeds, insurance policies, bank statements, the will. For 45 years, we had worked hard to build our assets. The company that started small was now worth millions. The house we lived in was completely paid off. 2 summer homes on the coast, financial investments. All of it would have gone to Julie someday, our only legacy. But in that moment, with the pain still fresh and the betrayal even more so, I realized that legacy could not fall into the hands of someone who didn't even respect the death of her own father. I picked up the phone and called Mr. Matthews, Anthony's lifelong attorney and friend. "I need to see you today. It's urgent," I told him, the decision already firm in my heart. Vengeance, they say, is a dish best served cold, but my actions wouldn't be motivated by revenge, but by justice, by respect for Anthony's memory, and for a lesson that was decades overdue. Sitting in Mr. Matthews' office, I explained my situation, sparing no detail. He listened attentively, taking occasional notes, his experienced face showing no judgment. "Claire, I completely understand your pain, but I must ask, are you certain you want to proceed with this? It's a decision that will completely change your daughter's future." I looked out the office window, at the city of Austin that Anthony and I knew so well. Every street held a memory of ours. Every corner kept a shared secret. This city saw us grow, saw us love, saw us build something from nothing. I'm sure, Counselor. If Julie doesn't value what we built in life, she has no right to value it after we're gone. He nodded and began to explain the options. Anthony's will left everything to me, and then to Julie. But I was still alive, and as his widow, I had every right to do as I pleased with our estate. "Let's start by transferring everything exclusively into your name. Then, we can create a foundation in Anthony's name," he suggested. "The entire estate will go to this foundation upon your passing, with specific guidelines on how it must be used." I spent the next few weeks immersed in paperwork, signatures, and meetings. The Anthony Anderson Foundation was officially registered 1 month after his death. Its purpose was to provide technical education for young people from low-income backgrounds who wanted to work in the construction trades. It was perfect. Anthony's legacy would be exactly what he always valued, giving opportunities to those who truly deserved them, not to those who took them for granted. Meanwhile, Julie continued her life in New York City. The calls were infrequent and always brief. She never asked how I was coping with my grief. She only talked about her busy life, the parties, the trips. 3 months after Anthony's passing, I received another call from her. "Mum, I have a problem. Robert wants to buy a bigger apartment, closer to downtown. We found the perfect one, but we need a down payment of $200,000. Could you lend it to us? With Dad's inheritance, that must be a small amount for you now." I felt my heart ache. Even in death, Anthony received no respect. Now he was just the inheritance. "Julie, I can't lend you that money." "What do you mean you can't, Mum? You always helped us. And now with everything Dad left, there is no inheritance, Julie." The silence on the other end of the line was almost palpable. "What do you mean there's no inheritance? Dad had the company, the house, the investments." "All of that is now part of the Anthony Anderson Foundation," I explained. "A charitable institution for young people who truly value opportunities." She exploded. There was screaming, accusations, threats. She said I couldn't do that the money was hers by right, that she would sue me. I listened to it all in silence, letting the storm pass. When she finally calmed down, I spoke with the same quiet resolve as before. Your father died, and you chose a birthday party over saying goodbye. No court in the world will sympathize with you, Julie. The money was ours, built with our sweat, and now it will help people who truly deserve a chance. She hung up on me. We didn't speak for weeks. During that time, I became actively involved with the foundation. I met incredible young people, full of dreams and determination. People who reminded me of a young Anthony, hardworking, honest, and grateful for every opportunity. We organized the first technical course in civil construction, fully funded by the foundation. 20 students were selected from hundreds of applicants. Seeing their eager and thankful faces on the first day of class brought me the first genuine joy I had felt since Anthony's death. One day while I was at the foundation's office, I had an unexpected visitor. It was Robert, Julie's husband. Dressed elegantly as always in his expensive suit and imported shoes, he walked in as if he owned the place. He smiled that smile that never reached his eyes. Claire, we need to talk. This whole foundation story has gone too far. Julie is devastated. I looked at him calmly. Robert, my daughter wasn't devastated when her father died. I doubt she's devastated now. His fake smile vanished. Ma'am, let's be practical. That money belongs to the family. Julie is the only child, the sole heir. And where was this sole heir when her father was being buried? Robert shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Look, that was a misunderstanding. We had commitments that couldn't be cancelled. A birthday party, Robert. A party. That was more important than her father's funeral. He took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain his composure. The past is the past, Claire. What matters is the future. And Julie and I had plans for that money. And now 20 young people have a future thanks to that money, I countered. I think Anthony would prefer it this way. Robert's face turned red with rage. He stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. You're going to regret this. We're going to contest that will, that ridiculous foundation. We are going to get back what is ours by right. I remained seated, looking at him calmly. Do what you feel is best, Robert. But remember, court proceedings are public. Everyone will know why you're contesting it. Because my daughter chose a party over saying goodbye to her own father. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard that the pictures on the wall trembled. But I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I felt that Anthony would be proud of me. The following months were a whirlwind of emotions and events. As promised, Julie and Robert filed a lawsuit to contest the creation of the foundation and the transfer of assets. They alleged that I was mentally unstable after Anthony's death and had been manipulated by malicious people. The process was painful. I had to relive Anthony's death several times, explain to strangers why my only daughter didn't attend her father's funeral, and justify decisions that should have been mine alone. Mr. Matthews was tireless. He gathered all the necessary evidence, text messages, call records, and documents signed by Anthony while he was still alive that demonstrated his desire to help young people in need. Even Julie's social media posts from the day of the funeral, showing smiling photos from Robert's birthday party while I was burying my husband, were included in the case file. The judge took only 3 months to deliver a verdict. The foundation was legitimate, the assets had been legally transferred, and I was in full possession of my mental faculties when I made the decision. Julie and Robert lost, and they lost spectacularly. The news spread quickly through Austin. Anthony's friends, the company's employees, even the neighbors, everyone found out. The couple who was once invited to every social event in New York City suddenly found themselves ostracized. No one wanted to be associated with people who would skip their own father's funeral for a party. 2 weeks after the verdict, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Martha, Julie's secretary. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm worried about your daughter. She hasn't been to the office in days. Robert left the house after a huge fight. I thought you should know." I thanked her for the information, but did nothing about it. A part of me was still too hurt to reach out. But another part, the part that would always be a mother, couldn't help but worry. 3 days later, my doorbell rang late at night. I opened the door to find Julie standing on the threshold, a small suitcase by her side. Her face was swollen from crying. Her dark circles were deep, and her hair was a mess, so different from the polished image she always worked so hard to maintain. I said nothing. I just opened my arms, and she collapsed into them, sobbing. I let her in. I made some tea while she settled into her old room. We sat in the living room in silence for a long time. The ticking of the old grandfather clock, a wedding gift from Anthony, was the only sound between us. "Robert left me," she finally said, her voice hoarse. "He said he didn't marry me to end up without an inheritance, that I wasn't worth the trouble without Dad's money." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. "I was so stupid, Mum. So stupid. I spent years chasing after people who only cared about what I could offer them. Parties, connections, status. And I abandoned the only people who truly loved me." The tears returned, more intense now. I'll never forgive myself for not being there when Dad passed. Never. How could I have been so cruel? How could I have been so empty? I placed my hand on hers, not as a sign of forgiveness, not yet, but as a sign of acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, she was finally seeing the truth. "What can I do, Mum? How can I fix this?" I glanced at the grandfather clock. Anthony always said that a clock only stops when it's beyond repair. But he also used to say that almost anything in life can be rebuilt, if there's enough will. "I don't know if you can fix it, Julie. Some things, once broken, are never the same again. But maybe we can build something new from the pieces." The next morning, I took Julie to see the foundation. I showed her the young people studying, learning trades that would change their lives. I told her about every decision, every plan, every dream I had for Anthony's legacy. She listened in silence, her eyes scanning every corner of the place, seeing her father's name on the walls, on the uniforms, in the futures of those young people. "Can I help?" she asked finally. "Not for the money. I don't want any of that back. I just want to be part of something that matters, something that honors Dad." I considered her words. I thought about all the years of neglect, the pain, the final betrayal of her not being there when Anthony needed her most. But I also thought about what he would say in that moment. The foundation needs someone with a background in marketing, someone who can tell our story, attract sponsors, expand our reach. A small smile appeared on Julie's face. Not the fake smile from her social media photos, but something softer, more genuine. It wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild. Forgiveness wouldn't come overnight. But maybe, like the old grandfather clock that Anthony had fixed so many times, we could find a new rhythm together. That evening, I sat in Anthony's armchair, as I had every night since he was gone. I looked at our wedding photo on the side table. So young, so hopeful, so unaware of the joys and sorrows life would bring us. "You were always better at forgiving than I was, Anthony," I whispered to the photo. "But I'm trying. I'm trying to be a little more like you." The grandfather clock continued its steady ticking, marking not just the time that passes, but also the time that heals. Slowly, painfully, but inevitably. 6 months had passed since Julie came home. 6 months of slow, painful reconstruction. It wasn't easy. There were days of heavy silence, nights of crying, and mornings of awkwardness. But there were also moments of genuine connection, of unexpected laughter, of shared memories of Anthony that made us feel his presence again. Julie took over the Foundation's communications with a dedication that surprised me. She used her New York City contacts to secure important partnerships, expanded our social media presence, and organized events that attracted donors and volunteers. Her marketing skills, once used only to promote superficial products and an empty lifestyle, now served a greater purpose. One afternoon, as we were organizing the graduation ceremony for the Foundation's first class, she showed me something on her phone. "Look, Mom, Robert is getting married again." On the screen, I saw her ex-husband smiling next to a blonde woman who was showing off an ostentatious diamond ring. The caption said something about finding true love and starting a new life. Julie just shrugged. "I heard her father owns a hotel chain. Looks like he found another inheritance to chase." There was no bitterness in her voice, only a calm observation, as if she were talking about a stranger, someone she never really knew. "Do you miss him?" I asked, curious. She thought for a moment. "Not him. I miss the idea I had of him, of the life I thought we were building. But it was all an illusion, wasn't it? I was so busy trying to impress people who didn't care about me that I didn't even realize I was married to someone who didn't care either." I placed my hand on hers. "Sometimes we need to lose everything to find what truly matters." Julie smiled. "Like Dad always said, the value of things isn't in how long they last, but in the intensity with which they happen." I was stunned. "You remember that?" "I remember a lot more than I ever let on, Mum. I was just too busy pretending to be someone else to admit it." On graduation day, 20 young people received their diplomas in civil construction techniques. Each of them had a story of overcoming adversity. Each of them had a bright future ahead, thanks to Anthony's vision and the legacy we built together. When the last name was called, Julie went up to the stage. It wasn't planned. She hadn't told me she was going to do it. I saw the nervousness on her face as she adjusted the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Julie Anderson, daughter of Anthony Anderson, for whom this foundation is named." Her voice trembled slightly. "Many of you don't know me, and for good reason. I spent years running away from this place, from this city, from these people. Running from what I considered a life that was too simple for my big dreams." She paused, taking a deep breath. "My father died 9 months ago, and I wasn't there to say goodbye." A murmur went through the auditorium. Some of Anthony's closest friends, who were in attendance, looked at me with compassion. I was too busy with a party, with appearances, with people I thought were important. I made the worst mistake a daughter can make, failing to recognize the value of unconditional love until it was too late. Tears began to stream down her face, but she continued. "Seeing all of you here today, I see my father's true legacy, not in material assets that I tried to claim as my own by right, but in the opportunities he always wanted to offer to those who truly deserve and value them." She looked directly at me in the audience. "And I see the legacy of my mother, Claire Anderson, whose strength and wisdom taught me the hardest and most necessary lesson of my life, that respect and love are not rights acquired by blood, but privileges earned through actions." I felt my own eyes well up with tears. To each of you graduating today, I ask only one thing. Never take for granted the people who truly love you. Never assume there will be a tomorrow to say what needs to be said today. And never, ever put material things above the people who would give their lives for you. When she came down from the stage, the entire auditorium was on its feet, applauding, not just for the bravery of her public confession, but for the echo of truth her words stirred in every heart present. That night, we went home together. We sat on the porch watching the stars, just as we used to when she was little, and Anthony would teach us the constellations. "You know, Mum," Julie said softly, "I always thought success was about having more money, more status, more connections. But now I see that success is needing less to be happy." I smiled, thinking how Anthony would have said the exact same thing. "Do you think he would forgive me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Your father?" In a heartbeat. He was never one to hold a grudge. "And you, Mum, do you forgive me?" I looked at my daughter, not the elegant, artificial woman she had become in New York City, but the curious little girl who used to follow Anthony around the construction site, fascinated by every brick, every board, every nail. "I'm learning to forgive, Julie. A little more each day." She nodded, understanding that it was the best I could offer at that moment. Complete forgiveness was still on the horizon, but we were walking in the right direction. The old grandfather clock chimed midnight, as it had every night since Anthony hung it there decades ago. Its familiar ticking was a constant reminder. Time passes, wounds heal, life goes on. And sometimes, just sometimes, you have to break something to rebuild it stronger. A year after Anthony's death, the Anderson Foundation had graduated 3 classes and expanded to 2 new cities. What began as an act of justice, or perhaps revenge, had transformed into something much bigger, something even I couldn't have imagined. Julie and I found a new balance together. She decided to stay in Austin, renting a small apartment near the foundation. She started dating a math teacher who taught our students, a simple, honest man, as different from Robert as one could imagine. One Sunday afternoon, while we were cleaning out Anthony's office, something I had put off for so long, we found an old box in the back of the closet. Inside were dozens of letters, yellowed with time. "What are these?" Julie asked, picking one up. I recognized the handwriting immediately. "They're letters your father and I wrote to each other when we were young, before we got married." Julie carefully opened one, the paper fragile after decades in storage. "My dearest Claire," she read aloud, "today I visited the plot of land where we'll build our future home. It's still just a piece of dirt, but I closed my eyes and could see it all. The porch where we'll have coffee on Sunday mornings, the room where our children will sleep, the garden you've always dreamed of having. I don't have much to offer you, other than calloused hands and a heart full of dreams, but I promise to build a future where you will never have to doubt my love." Julie's voice broke. She looked at me, her eyes shining with tears. "He really kept that promise, didn't he? He built all of this for us." I nodded, unable to speak. The pain of loss was still sharp, but now it was mixed with a deep gratitude for the years we had together. We spent the rest of the afternoon reading the letters, laughing and crying at the words of love, the plans, the dreams. Some realized, others not. It was like having Anthony back, if only in words written decades ago. "Mum," Julie said as we put the last letter away, "I think I understand now why you did what you did with the inheritance. It wasn't about the money. It was about honoring this story, this life you built together." I placed the box back in the closet, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "Your father always said that the real inheritance isn't what we leave for people, but what we leave in people." A week later, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Louise, our old neighbor who had moved to New York City years ago. "Claire, honey, you're not going to believe who I just saw at a restaurant here on Fifth Avenue." "Who?" "Robert, Julie's ex-husband. He was with that rich fiancée, you know, the hotel owner's daughter. But that's not the important part. The important part is what I overheard." I sat down, sensing the gossip would be juicy. They were arguing at the table next to mine, something about the prenuptial agreement her father is demanding. Robert was furious. He said something like, "I've been through this before. I'm not falling into that trap again." And you won't believe what she said back to him. She said, "My father knows the whole story about how you abandoned your ex-wife when she lost her inheritance, how you didn't show up for your father-in-law's funeral." An involuntary smile formed on my lips. "Her whole family knows the story, Claire. The father made sure to investigate his future son-in-law's past, and now he's demanding an ironclad prenup, saying he doesn't trust someone who would skip his own father-in-law's funeral." A year had passed since I changed everything in my life. A year since I decided Anthony's legacy would not fall into ungrateful hands. The news about Robert didn't surprise me. People like him rarely change. They just find new prey. "Karma really is something, isn't it?" I said to Louise, unable to completely hide the satisfaction in my voice. "You have no idea. They say he's desperate. The rich fiancé threatened to call off the wedding if he doesn't sign, and her parents are scrutinizing every step of his life." After I hung up, I reflected on how life comes full circle. I didn't wish Robert ill. That would be giving him more importance than he deserved. But there was a certain poetic justice in seeing him face the consequences of his own actions. The following week, the foundation had an important visitor. A major developer in the construction industry, an old friend of Anthony's, came to see our work. He was so impressed that he offered to hire every graduate from the next class. "Anthony would be proud, Claire," he said, looking around in admiration. "To turn pain into something so beautiful. Not everyone can do that." Julie was by my side during the visit. I realized how much she had grown in that year, not in age, but in wisdom. The shallow, self-centered woman who abandoned her father on his deathbed seemed to have vanished completely. In her place was someone who arrived early and left late from the foundation, who knew every student by name, who cried at graduations as if they were her own children graduating. Someone who finally understood the real value of things. One Saturday afternoon, as we were having coffee on the porch, a habit we had revived from old times, Julie surprised me with a question. "Mum, do you think I still have the right to visit Dad's grave?" The question caught me off guard. In all this time, we had never talked about it. "Why would you think you don't?" She stirred her coffee, avoiding my gaze. "Because I wasn't there when he passed. Because I chose a party over him. Because I failed as a daughter." I put my cup down and took her hands in mine. They were cold, despite the afternoon heat. "Julie, your father loved you from the first second he knew I was pregnant. He spent sleepless nights with you when you had a fever. He worked overtime to pay for your college. He smiled like a fool at your wedding, even knowing that Robert wasn't the right man for you." I paused, letting the words sink in. "He would forgive you in an instant. In fact, I think he already has." Her eyes filled with tears. "And you, Mum? Do you forgive me?" I looked out at the garden that Anthony and I had planted together. The roses were blooming again, just as they did every year, regardless of the storms they faced. "I'm learning to forgive a little more each day," I answered honestly. "Seeing you honor your father's legacy, seeing the impact we're having on these people's lives, that heals a lot of wounds." The next day, we went to the cemetery together. It was the first time Julie had visited her father's grave. We brought flowers, not expensive roses from a florist, but simple daisies from our garden, Anthony's favorite. Julie knelt before the headstone, tracing the letters of his name with her fingers. She spoke softly, as if having a private conversation. I respected her moment, standing a few feet away. When she was finished, her eyes were red, but there was a serenity on her face that I hadn't seen in years. "You know," she said as we walked back to the car, "for so long, I believed happiness was having everything I wanted. Now I know it's wanting everything I already have." I smiled, recognizing Anthony's words. He always used to say that when we were just starting out, when everything we owned fit into 2 suitcases. That evening, as we were making dinner together, another rediscovered habit, Julie told me about her plans. "I've been thinking, Mum. The foundation is growing, and we need to expand our reach. I was thinking of creating a special program for women. Many of them are single mothers. They need flexible hours, daycare for their kids." Her eyes sparkled as she spoke, her hands gesturing excitedly, just like Anthony did when he was excited about a new project. "We could call it the Rena program, in honor of the nickname Dad used to call you." I felt a lump in my throat. Anthony was the only one who ever called me that, a nickname born in our early dating days that remained our little secret of love. "How do you remember that?" Julie smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her eyes. "I remember a lot more than I ever let on, Mum. I remember Dad calling you that when he thought no one was listening. I remember the way your eyes would light up when he came home. I remember the 2 of you dancing in the living room with no music, just because." I hugged my daughter, feeling as if a part of Anthony were there with us, in the kitchen he had built with his own hands. "The Rena program would be perfect," I finally said, wiping away a stray tear. A few days later, I received another unexpected call. It was Mr. Matthews, our attorney. "Claire, I received a peculiar inquiry today. Robert, your daughter's ex-husband, wants to set up a meeting. He said he has a proposal related to the foundation." A shiver of discomfort went down my spine. What kind of proposal? He didn't go into detail, but he seems desperate. He mentioned something about making peace with the past. I considered it for a moment. Robert never did anything without a personal motive. If he was seeking reconciliation, there was certainly something else behind it. "Set up the meeting, Mr. Matthews, but I want Julie to be present." "Are you sure, Claire? It might be unpleasant for her." "I'm sure. No more secrets, no more protections. She needs to see for herself who Robert really is." The meeting was scheduled for the following week at Mr. Matthews' office. Julie was visibly nervous when I told her, but she agreed to participate. "I'm curious to see what he wants," she said, trying to sound casual. "We don't have any outstanding financial ties. Everything was settled in the divorce." We arrived at the office together, promptly at 10 in the morning. Robert was already there, impeccably dressed as always, but there was something different in his eyes. He looked tired, defeated. "Claire, Julie," he greeted with a brief nod. "Thank you for coming." Mr. Matthews motioned to the chairs. We all sat around his polished mahogany table. "All right, Mr. Thompson, the floor is yours. What is this proposal you have for my clients?" Robert cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "First of all, I want to apologize. For everything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. But I want you to know that I recognize my mistakes." Julie and I exchanged a glance. This did not sound like the Robert we knew. "As you may know, my engagement has ended. Camille's family discovered certain things about my past, about how I behaved when Anthony passed away." Ah, there it was. The real reason behind the apology. I lost everything. My reputation, my contacts, my guaranteed future. No one wants to be associated with someone who would skip their father-in-law's funeral to go to a party. A heavy silence filled the room. I felt no satisfaction at his misfortune, just a deep sadness for all the wrong choices that had brought us to this point. "And what does that have to do with us, Robert?" I finally asked. He took a deep breath. "I want to make a donation to the foundation. Everything I have, my apartment, my car, my savings. It's not much, but it's all I have left." I was genuinely surprised. Why? Because I need to do something right for the first time in my life. Because I want Anthony's name to be associated with something positive, not the scandal I caused. And because he looked at Julie. Because I hope that one day when people hear my story, they'll see that even someone like me can change. Julie was pale, her hands gripping the arms of her chair so tightly her knuckles were white. "It's convenient that you want to change just when you've lost everything, don't you think?" she said, her voice trembling slightly. Robert nodded. "Yes, it is convenient. And pathetic. I'm not pretending to be noble, Julie. I'm desperate. But the donation is genuine, with no strings attached. You can use the money however you want. I don't want any recognition. I don't want my name on anything. I just want to fix a little bit of the damage I caused." I looked at Mr. Matthews, who gave a slight nod, indicating it could be a legitimate offer. "We'll consider it," I finally replied. "Mr. Matthews will review the details and be in touch." Robert stood up, looking relieved just not to have been immediately rejected. "Thank you, As he left, Julie slumped back in her chair, letting out a long sigh. "What do you think?" I asked her. "Honestly, I think he's desperate and saw the foundation as a way to clean up his image. But that doesn't mean we should turn it down. The money can help a lot of people, regardless of his motivation." I smiled, proud of the wisdom she showed. Exactly what your father would have said. 2 years had passed since Anthony's death. The Anderson Foundation now occupied an entire building, offering technical courses in civil construction, electrical work, plumbing, interior design, and basic architecture. The RENA program, dedicated to women, was graduating its 3rd class with a 95% employment rate. Robert's donation, which we ended up accepting, was allocated entirely to that program. We never saw or heard from him again, only occasional rumors that he was working at a construction company in a small town, starting over from scratch as a salesman. Julie and I found our new normal. She continued to live in her own apartment, but we had dinner together several times a week. I met her boyfriend Mark, the math teacher, a kind man with an easy smile and attentive eyes, who treated her with a genuine respect she had never received from Robert. One Sunday afternoon, as we were organizing an anniversary party for the foundation, Julie called me over to look at something on her phone. "Look at this, Mom. One of our students from the very first class." On the screen, I saw a smiling young man next to a small but well-built house. The caption read, "My first home, built with my own 2 hands, all thanks to the Anthony Anderson Foundation." "He was our first student to get financing to build his own house," Julie explained, full of pride. "He used everything he learned with us." A wave of emotion washed over me. This was exactly how Anthony and I had started. A small house, built with our own hands, brick by brick, dream by dream. "Your father would be so proud," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Of both of us," Julie completed, taking my hand. That night, I sat in Anthony's old armchair, as I did every night. The grandfather clock continued its steady ticking, marking the time that never stops. I looked at our wedding photo and smiled. "We did the right thing, Anthony. I whispered into the quiet house. Your legacy is safe. It's touching lives, changing futures, exactly as you always wanted. And for the first time since he passed, I felt a complete sense of peace. The pain was still there. It always would be. But now it coexisted with something stronger. The certainty that our love never really ended. It just transformed into something bigger than ourselves. The grandfather clock struck midnight, as it had for decades. I closed my eyes and could almost feel Anthony beside me, his scent of sawdust and coffee, his calloused hand on mine. You did it, Rena, the wind coming through the window seemed to say. You transformed our greatest pain into our greatest work. I fell asleep in the armchair, with a smile on my lips and peace in my heart. The revenge I once sought had transformed into something much more powerful, a legacy of love that would outlive us all. And in the end, that was the only victory that truly mattered. 3 years after Anthony's death, the Anderson Foundation received a national award for social impact. There we were, Julie and I, on the stage of a grand theater in New York City, accepting a plaque recognizing the work that had transformed more than 500 lives. Julie gave the speech. She was beautiful in a simple blue dress, without the excessive jewelry and makeup from her time in the city. She spoke eloquently about her father's legacy, about second chances, about how sometimes you have to lose everything to find your true purpose. She didn't mention our family's story, the absence at the funeral, the court battle over the inheritance. It wasn't necessary. That story had already served its purpose in our lives. Now we were writing a new chapter. In the audience, I saw familiar faces, graduated students, dedicated teachers, partners who believed in our vision. And among them, to my surprise, was Robert, sitting discreetly in the back, not drawing attention, just watching. Our eyes met briefly. He gave a small nod, which I returned. There was no longer anger or resentment, only the silent acknowledgement that we are all capable of terrible mistakes, and perhaps of redemption. When we returned to Austin, I found an envelope in the mail. Inside was a handwritten letter from Robert and a substantial check for the foundation. Claire and Julie, congratulations on the well-deserved recognition. Seeing what you have built from so much suffering is inspiring. I can never make up for the pain I caused, but I hope this additional contribution helps to expand the foundation's work even further. I am rebuilding my life from scratch, as a salesman at a small construction company. It's honest work, for the first time in my life. I've learned that there are no shortcuts to the things that truly matter. Julie, I hope you have found someone who truly values you, not for the inheritance you might have, but for the extraordinary human being you are. Claire, thank you for showing me, in the hardest way possible, that character is the only legacy that truly matters in the end. With respect and sincere regret, Robert. I showed the letter to Julie when she came over for dinner that night. She read it in silence, her eyes misty. Do you think he's really changed? She asked, handing the letter back. I don't know, honey. Maybe. People can be surprising when they're forced to face the consequences of their actions. Julie nodded thoughtfully. You know what's funny? If everything had happened differently, if Dad had passed and I had been there, if the inheritance had come to me as planned, I'd probably still be with Robert, living an empty life in New York City, never finding out who he really was. And never finding out who you really are, I added softly. She smiled, that genuine smile that reminded me so much of Anthony. Yes, that too. That week, Mark proposed to her. It was simple, during dinner at his small apartment. No fanfare, no showing off on social media. Just a sincere question, a modest ring, and a promise of true love. When Julie showed me the ring, I couldn't help but compare it to the extravagant diamond Robert had given her years ago. This one was small, but chosen with so much care, so much meaning. He saved up for months, Julie said, looking at the stone with admiration. He refused to accept any help. He said he wanted to get it on his own. The wedding was scheduled for 6 months later, in the garden of the house that was once mine and Anthony's. It would be a small ceremony, only for the people who were truly important in our lives. As I helped with the preparations, I caught myself thinking about how life comes full circle. 3 years ago, I was devastated by the loss of Anthony and the betrayal of Julie. Now I was helping to plan her wedding to a man who loved her for who she was, not what she had. One evening, as we were reviewing the guest list on the porch, Julie asked an unexpected question. "Mum, do you think we should invite Robert?" I was taken aback. "Do you want to invite him?" She thought for a moment. "I don't know. Part of me thinks it would be a gesture of forgiveness, to show that we've moved on. Another part feels like we shouldn't mix the past and the future." "What does Mark think?" "He said he trusts my judgment, that he's secure enough in what we have to not worry about ghosts from the past." I considered the question carefully. "You know, Julie, your father always said that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past. It's just refusing to let it determine your future. If inviting Robert will bring you peace, then do it. If not, that's okay too." She nodded, grateful for the advice. In the end, she decided to send an invitation. Robert replied politely, declining the invitation but sending his sincere wishes for their happiness. He enclosed another check for the foundation, this time with a note. "For the RENA program, so that other women may find the strength that Claire demonstrated." Julie and Mark's wedding was exactly as it should have been. Sincere, emotional, and surrounded only by people who genuinely cared. When she walked into the garden, wearing a simple dress that had once been mine, tailored with modern touches, I couldn't hold back the tears. "Anthony should be here," I whispered to myself. A gentle breeze rustled the flowers in the garden as if in response, and for a brief moment, I felt as if he were there, by my side, smiling that smile that lit up his eyes. During the reception, one of the graduates from the Foundation's first class, now a successful contractor, approached me. "Mrs. Anderson, I wanted to thank you personally. You and Mr. Anderson changed my life. Today, I have my own crew, I built my own house, and my kids have a future." His eyes were moist, his gratitude palpable. "I'm thinking of starting a similar program in my hometown, a place where kids like me can learn a trade, have a chance. If you could give me some guidance." I looked at him. I looked at Julie, dancing happily with her new husband. I looked at the blooming garden that Anthony and I planted decades ago. Everything was connected. It all made sense now. "It would be my pleasure," I replied, feeling a quiet happiness wash over me. Anthony's legacy wasn't just the foundation, or the houses we built, or even our daughter. It was something more subtle, more profound. It was the way his love and his values lived on, spreading like ripples in a lake, touching lives he never knew. And my legacy? Well, maybe it was the courage to turn pain into purpose, betrayal into wisdom, and revenge into true justice. That night, after all the guests had gone, I sat alone in the garden, looking up at the stars. The old grandfather clock chimed midnight inside, punctual as always. "We did it, Anthony," I whispered to the starry sky. "Our story didn't end the way we imagined, but maybe it ended exactly as it was meant to." A shooting star streaked across the sky, bright and fleeting. I smiled, remembering how Anthony used to say that shooting stars were kisses sent by those who have already passed on. And in that moment, I knew with certainty it had all been worth it. Now, if you liked this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments which part left you speechless. Oh, and don't forget to become a member to get access to exclusive videos that I don't post here. I'll be waiting for you there.